Hi, my name is Kimberly Johnson, and I went to Harriet Tubman when it was very brand new, before it was even Harriet Tubman, back in 1980. I graduated in 8th grade in 1982. Currently, I work for the state of Oregon as an analyst. I mostly analyze data, and I have a degree in English. I'm not sure what else you want me to say.
So my name is Carmelo. I'm in 6th grade. My question is, why do you like Harriet Tubman so much?
Hi, Carmelo. Is that like after Carmelo Anthony?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I love the story of Harriet Tubman because she was a very courageous woman. She was a courageous warrior. And she thought about people, not just about herself and her own freedom, but she thought about the freedom of the members of her family and other people who were enslaved, and she helped lead them to freedom. I'm proud of her courage.
Well, thanks for telling me.
Okay, Carmelo, you have a good rest of the day.
You too.
Great name.
Okay, come on. Start with your name.
Hi, my name is Esther. Could you tell us about your educational history?
Yes, and did you say your name is Esther?
Yes.
I have an aunt named Esther. I attended what used to be Highland Grade School, which is now Martin Luther King Jr. Grade School. I attended Boise Elliott back when it was called Boise, and I attended Girls Polytechnic High School and graduated from Girls Polytechnic High School in 1965. And then later I would go on to Portland State University in 1971. I graduated with a degree in administration of justice. And some years later, in the 90s, I had the good fortune of attending Harvard University and completing the certificate program in leadership in government.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Have a great day, Esther.
You too.
Okay, who wants to ask another one? Go ahead, Augie.
Hello.
Good morning.
My name is Augie. I am a 6th grader here.
Say your name again?
Augie?
Augie?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why is Tubman important to you?
The school.
Yeah, like the school.
It's
Like,
important. Oh, go ahead. Was there more?
Specify the school.
why is like the school here important to you? Harriet Tubman Middle School.
I think it's significant. It's very important that we have a school named after a courageous black woman in our history, in American history. And Harriet Tubman stands for all that is right and good, and she stands for fighting for justice and freedom. And that's a good thing for a good person, for the school to be named after. Those are good virtues for the school to stand on.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good day, Augie.
You too.
Thank you.
We had heard that you play a pretty important, or helped to play a pretty important part in getting Tubman open. Is that true?
Well, actually, in the 1980s, I was a part of an organization called the Black United Front. And the Black United Front fought for what we called school reform. We wanted a quality, non-racist education for all children in Portland Public Schools. We wanted a curriculum that reflected the cultural history of black people. We wanted more black educators, more black teachers and administrators. Those are some of the things we fought for. And we also fought for a middle school for our community. And there was a woman who she's no longer living. In fact, she passed away recently. Her name was Sharian Hager. Sharian Hager. And Sharian was a supporter of the Black United Front. And she was the person who suggested that we name the school after Harriet Tubman. So that's how that came into being, from the suggestion of the late Sharian Hager. Sharian was also someone who worked for American Friends Service Committee as co-director of their education program. And a lot of her work was supporting parents and students in Portland Public Schools. And she did that work in the 1980s into the early 1990s. So Sharian,
I love to dance. I love to have fun. I love being around friends and family. And I love to shop. I'll say that. But no, I do like to have a good time.
How long did you live in New York and how long did you live in Oregon?
Okay, I was in New York. I left New York when I was 18. And I just turned 69 on February 27th. You do the math. Your auntie's birthday? You figured it out? Somebody help her. I've been out here for 51 years.
Oh,
18 and 51, that's 69. Yes, right here.
what does Tubman mean to you?
Tubman means to me an affirmation. It affirms the fact that if a community is committed to doing something, by pulling together, we can make it happen. It also is important because Harriet Tubman was a phenomenal heroine. She was somebody, there's a poem called Harriet Tubman, didn't take no stuff, wasn't afraid of nothing either. Didn't come in this world to be no slave and didn't stay one either. Farewell, she said to her friends one night. She was very sad to leave him. And then it goes on to talk about how she took 300 people, was able to make 300 people go to Canada and escape slavery. So I think it's a symbol of resilience. Harriet Tubman is a symbol of courage, and that's what the school really means to me. Who haven't I heard from? I haven't heard from. I heard from you. You did I?
Why do you think Tubman is important to this community?
Because I think it's an expression of how important it is for people to come together and make a change that will benefit everyone. Can I talk to you all about one little part about Tubman's history? Do you all know that at one point it was the Harriet Tubman Young Women's Leadership Academy? Well, I was very involved in that because it was during the time when we had Superintendent Vicki Phillips here, and she created a design team, and she asked me to be on that team. And what she really wanted us to do was to give her some input and some feedback, particularly as it related to the Jefferson cluster. And so she had a budget, and we were able to travel to different cities and kind of look at what they were doing in their schools. And fortunately, I ended up going on the trip to New York. So that was very important. And so we went to the Young Women's Leadership Academy in New York. And we spent a day there, and we got really fascinated with what they were doing. And our team, you know, we got to talking about it. And at that point, this school had been closed. And so we started thinking about, you know what? This school needs to be reopened, and let's propose that it become a Young Women's Leadership Academy, modeled after the one in New York. And so I remember we came back, and there were all kinds of meetings. And see, the work that I did, I also worked with the U.S. Department of Ed and worked with the Federal Office for Civil Rights. And one of the things that was a real hot topic all over the country was having single gender schools. And one of the things, because people were saying, well, you shouldn't have all girls schools. Oh, you shouldn't have all boys schools. So what the government said is that if a school district wanted to have a single-sex school, they had to make sure that they provided similar accommodations to the other gender. So what our proposal ended up being, because I told them, I said, we can't just have an all-girls school. We have to provide something for the boys. And so what ended up becoming a part of the Jefferson redesign plan was that there'd be Harriet Tubman Young Women's Leadership Academy, and then there would be one at Jefferson that would be housed in Jefferson, and that was the Boys Academy. And I remember that we had a meeting, and the school district, you know, they had, you know, planned how they would do the Harriet Tubman, and they were getting ready to do it, but they hadn't made any plans for the Boys Leadership Academy. And so this is where, you know, Harriet Tubman's spirit of courage and being outspoken, I spoke up. I said, wait a minute, we cannot open the Girls Leadership Academy until we have planned to have the Boys Academy as well. And so that delayed the opening of this Young Women's Leadership Academy for a year, because they did not have, we walked into a meeting and they had like 2 binders about this thick that had all the plans for the Girls Academy. And I asked a very simple question, where are the plans for the Boys Academy? Oh, well, we're beginning to work on that. Well, until you work on it, legally you cannot start a single-sex academy for girls and not have one for boys. And so, and that's Title IX. Are you all familiar with Title IX? That's the gender equality law that says, you know, you got to be fair. Okay, so I'm certain. Is there anybody that I haven't heard from you? Do you?
But back in those days, one of the things that we took pride in was our athleticism. And Golden Ball was what the city did for all the grade schools. And since we were a new school, we got put into a league with schools like Boise and Highland and Sabin and Vernon. And they used to beat us all the time until I got into the 6th grade. And from the 6th grade to my 8th grade year, we never lost a basketball game. And we set records back then that may not still be records now, but have you ever heard of a team winning 101-9? Have you ever heard of a game where you were so far ahead at halftime the other team left at halftime because they didn't want to get beat any worse? But you got to remember that on that basketball team, we had 6 kids that became all-city, all-state basketball players. all in one school. But the difference was because we were in that dividing line between Jefferson, Washington, and Benson. 3 kids went to Jeff, 2 kids went to Washington, and I went to Benson. So we ended up playing each other in high school. But the memories that and the camaraderies that I had with those other kids have lasted a lifetime.
What was the name of your middle school team?
The middle school team name was Ann Palmer Bakery. There used to be a little bakery down this street up there on Williams Avenue. It doesn't exist anymore. But they were our sponsor. Yes?
Did you think you were going to be a basketball player when you grew up?
I did. I thought I was going to be a basketball player when I grew up. But would you like to guess what my best sport was? Since I went to the University of Oregon. I was a wide receiver. And I played for Benson Tech. And we came in second that year in the PIL. And a lot of us that went from Elliott to Benson Tech went on to college. Some of us went on academics, and some of us went on athletics. Doesn't make any difference how you get there. If you have the opportunity, go to college. It will make a big difference. Yes?
Do you still know the players on your basketball team?
Yes. On that basketball team?
Yeah.
There was Willie Stoudemire, Charles Stoudemire, Kenny Warren, Edward Johnson, and myself, Danny Bell, and there was one more. And Danny Bell was a special player on our team. Danny Bell could not score. That wasn't his job. Danny Bell's job was to foul the best player on the other team. Do you know what that did to the best player on the other team? It made him stop shooting. So if the best player on the other team didn't shoot, it gave us a better chance. Yes?
What were your
Accomplishments? I went to Benson Tech and I studied machine shop. I learned enough in machine shop that when I went on to the University of Oregon, I decided to study something else. Because in machine shop, your hands are going to always be dirty. So I went to the University of Oregon and I studied urban planning. I did not graduate from the University of Oregon because at that particular time there was a war going on called the Vietnam War. And I got drafted along with thousands of other young men to go fight in the Vietnam War. But I never got to Vietnam, although my orders said to go to Vietnam. I had an older brother who got drafted before me. And he said, since you're an athlete, when you get to the fort, go to the gym. So I was sent up to Fort Lewis, which is in Washington. And 5 days later, I was supposed to go to Vietnam. But since my brother said go to the gym, I went to the gym. And a lieutenant colonel came out and asked me, am I assigned somewhere? And I said, not yet. And he says, okay, you're assigned to Fort Lewis. And I asked why. And he says, because I want to win the basketball championship here, so you're not going to Vietnam. I got lucky. Because everybody else that graduated with me in that particular Army position went to Vietnam. Now, what did I do when I was in the Army? They trained me to be an MP. Does anybody know what an MP is? They say that an MP is a military policeman.
What fort did you, or what? Where did you say you were?
Fort Lewis
Lewis.
in Washington. Now, MP stands for military police. But when you're training, they tell you something else. When you're training, they tell you MP stands for masculine and proud. You notice how all of those movements are real quick? You don't see a soldier go. That's not discipline. One of the things you will learn, or you should learn, is discipline. Yes?
Did you have any friends that got drafted to the Vietnam War?
I had friends who fought in Vietnam.
Do you still
I have friends who were wounded in Vietnam, and I have friends that were killed in Vietnam.
Is there any survivors that you still talk to this day?
I couldn't hear
Is
that.
there any survivors that you talk to from this day?
Yes, yes. One of my friends was wounded twice before they finally sent him home. And he's still alive, and he still lives in Portland.
You born and raised in Portland?
I was born and raised in Portland, and I'm going to point to where I lived. You know where the Memorial Coliseum is?
Yeah.
You know where the Portland School District building is?
Yeah.
You know where the Blazer Arena is?
Yeah.
That's where I lived. Are there any homes left down there?
No.
I don't have a neighborhood to go home to. All I have is this school. Now, an interesting thing happened. When I got out of the military, I applied for a job at a company called Pacific Power. At Pacific Power, since I studied for 2 years at the University of Oregon, urban planning, they hired me and they taught me how to design power lines. You know, all those lines that go up and down the street that gives you electricity to your homes so you can turn on a switch and the light comes on? I designed those electrical lines. When they decided to rebuild Elliott Grade School and rename it Harriet Tubman, I was the Pacific Power and Light guy who redesigned the power to this building. So I got to come back to my old school and had something to do with its rebuild as to become Harriet Tubman. The only sad part I have about Harriet Tubman is that I lived outside the district and I wanted one of my sons to come back here. But because he was African American, they didn't want to bring more African Americans into the school. They wanted to bring more diversified kids into the school so that the whole class wasn't of one race, which is something I will bring up. When I was a kid, this whole class would have been all black, except for a few Chinese who lived in the area. Because this would have been considered the poor side of town. And back then, only the black people and the other people of color lived in this neighborhood. So going to a school like Benton Tech, to me and my family, was a means of getting out. Excuse me. So, it is nice to see that this area, the people who have moved into this area have taken care of their property and are trying to make this area a nice place to live. Oh, that one person that I said was on my basketball team, Willie Stoudemire. His family home is still up there on the corner, that yellow house up there in the corner. Yeah.
Does his family still live in the home?
As far as I know, they do. And does anybody know who Damon Stoudemire is? He played for the Portland Trailblazers.
Yeah, he was in that. Yeah.
He was Willie Stoudemire's son. Yes?
What is something that you're proud of?
Say again?
What is something that you're proud of?
Proud of. I am proud of the fact that I went to work for Pacific Power and Light Company, and I learned how to design power lines. Now, a lot of people can do that, and a few people are really good at it. The best person for that job becomes the senior estimator for his area. And I became the senior estimator for the state of Oregon. For the state of Oregon. So you know all those big buildings that are built downtown and at the Lloyd Center? Only the senior estimator gets to design the power to those places.
What is one thing that you're happy to see has changed here, and what is one thing you're sad to see has changed?
Oh, I'm glad to see that when they remodeled this building, they put in better heating systems. They put in better electronics so that you can have all of the better things that you have. But at the same time, it changed the way the school looks. So it doesn't look the same as it did when I was here. But improvements are good. Improvements are good.
What are some of your goals?
Some of the goals? Some of my goals? Some of my goals was to go out into the world and make a difference. And I found that studying urban planning would have given me the opportunity to see how communities grow, how they expand, and how new neighborhoods and things like that are designed. But since I didn't follow up on that, I ended up going to work for Pacific Power. In a way, I got to see that, because every time they expand and put in a new subdivision or build a new building, I got to be involved in it. Yes?
What do you want people to know about you?
Well, there are a couple of things. One of the things that I wanted to do was have a family when I was young so that I could participate with my children. I saw families that had older parents and noticed that they could not participate with their children. And I wanted to be able to do that. I'm proud to say that my daughter was the captain of the rally squad for football and basketball. My oldest son was the state champion for 3 years in wrestling. My second son was a 3-year starter at Madison High School basketball team. And my third son was a 3-year starter at Madison High School in baseball. Yes.
If you could have chosen to take your middle school education anywhere in Portland, would you still have chosen here?
Yes. I would have always have stayed here and tried to make this area more livable and more sustainable, because this was my home.